side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Victory! Victory to the Clover strikers!
Okay, thank you, brothers and sisters, for coming out here today. It's a beautiful day in San Francisco, but it's not a beautiful day for the workers, the Clover workers in South Africa, who are struggling for survival. And what is this about? What is this about? It's about an Israeli company called the CBC, Central Bottling Company, Milco, which owns Milco, which bought Clover, which is the largest dairy company in South Africa. And even though the unions and the Palestinian movement were against the purchase of it, the ANC government approved it. Now, the ANC government says they're against apartheid in Israel. They're against the apartheid policies in Israel. Why would the ANC government allow this company to take over the largest dairy business in South Africa? It's hypocrisy. It's an attack on the working class in South Africa.
Kickbacks.
And kickbacks. I mean, it's a corrupt government. They're looting the wealth of South Africa. They're privatizing it and turning it over into foreign capitalists and turning it over to multinationals like the Wertheim family. And who are the Wertheim family? The Wertheim family are billionaires in Israel. They have the franchise for Coca-Cola in Israel. So they are doing a big business, and they want to expand their business. So this Wertheim billionaire family, when they took over Milco, when they took over Clover, they promised that there would be no retrenchments, no layoffs until October 2022. They lied to the people of South Africa. They lied to the workers of South Africa. As soon as they took over, they started selling off the equipment in their plants in rural South Africa, started shutting down these plants which provide milk for the people of South Africa. And they also imposed a 20% pay cut on the workers at Clover in South Africa. So they flagrantly violated their promises to defend the workers of South Africa in their purchase. And what are their plans? Well, their plans are to shut down the plants in South Africa, import product from Israel. What is this? Can you imagine this? Israel was a supporter of the apartheid regime. They provided weapons, they provided military equipment, and the Histadrut, the Israeli Trade Union Federation, actually supported the apartheid regime. And now the ANC government is allowing this company, which is founded by Moshe Wertheim, to take over the largest dairy plant in Africa, the largest company. And we say that this has to end. This is Zionism, this is capitalism on a global scale, attacking the workers of South Africa, destroying the wealth of South Africa. And it's an attack on the working class. Now the unions, the General Industrial Workers Union of South Africa, the Food and Allied Workers Union of South Africa, and South African Federation of Trade Unions has demanded that this company be taken over, nationalized, and workers run it under worker self-management. We support that. We support this being nationalized and the workers run it, because the workers have the most to gain by running these plants. The capitalists who are investing in South Africa are looking for short-term gain. They want to make profits. They're profiteering off of this company, destroying it really in front of our faces. So this is an international day of action. There are actions in Sweden, there are actions in Israel, there are actions in Brazil, there are actions all over the world in solidarity with the South African Clover workers. In Los Angeles and in New York, there are actions as well. So this is a global day of action. And why do we have to have global day of action? Because we're fighting global capitalism. This isn't just about the Wertheim family and what they've done in South Africa. Companies are busting unions all over the world globally. They're attacking workers. And we have to defend them with the united global struggle, united working class movement globally to fight to defend the workers of South Africa and workers here in San Francisco who are trying to unionize and struggle. But union busting is a global struggle. In fact, in South Africa, Bezos and Amazon want to take over land, indigenous land in South Africa, to build their headquarters. We're saying that these global billionaires aren't interested in workers, they're interested in profiteering off the backs of the working class. We have to end that. We have to build solidarity. We need general strikes. We need a general strike in South Africa against the attack on the Clover workers, against the ANC government, which is imposing these attacks. In the United States, we need a workers' party, a labor party. That's what the United Front Committee for a Labor Party, which initiated this demonstration and call for action, is supporting. Global solidarity and the working class having their own political party. So our next speaker is a retired longshoreman who's been a leader of internationalism, Jack Heyman. Welcome, Jack.
We're out here this afternoon to express solidarity with the striking Clover workers in South Africa. The Longshore Union has a long history of solidarity with the working class in South Africa. I want to begin by expressing our solidarity with the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, with the South African Federation of Trade Union, that are solidly behind supporting the striking Clover workers. We in the Longshore Union in 1984 struck against a ship in South Africa to oppose the apartheid regime. Nelson Mandela was in prison at that time on Robben Island. In 1990 he was freed. And when Nelson Mandela did his world tour, one of the first places he went to was Oakland, right across the bay. And he spoke, Nelson Mandela spoke at the Oakland Coliseum. And some of the first words out of his mouth were that he wanted to acknowledge the instrumental role that the Longshore Union played in sparking the anti-apartheid movement in this country. That kind of solidarity exists today. This is why we support the largest union in South Africa, the National Metal Workers Union, and their General Secretary, Irvin Jim. They're going to join us February 1st, Friday, in a forum, a webinar, to demand freedom for our political prisoners, the anti-racist and anti-imperialist prisoners like Mumia Abu-Jamal, like Julian Assange, like Jalil Muntakim, and so many others. We continue that kind of solidarity with the South African workers, and it's expressed with Comrade Irvin Jim being part of this webinar on February 1st. We're out here today to let the Zionist government of Israel know that we're keeping an eye on what they're doing to the workers in South Africa. Not only during the apartheid days when the Israeli government supported the apartheid government of South Africa, when they offered them nuclear weapons. Against who? Against the black and colored people of South Africa? Who did the Zionist government have intentions of loaning that to? A racist, fascistic government. And today they're treating the workers, the Clover workers who are striking for their jobs, they're treating them exactly the way the apartheid regime would be handling things in South Africa. When you struck, they didn't recognize trade unions. But now they're part of a trade union movement. The problem in South Africa is that when the transition was made from capitalist apartheid to a black government, black-centered government in South Africa, the transition was not made from capitalism to socialism. The Freedom Charter of the ANC called for nationalizing the mines and the financial institutions in that country. But the ANC leadership of Thabo Mbeki. And at that time, back in the 80s when they were striking against apartheid, Cyril Ramaphosa was one of the leaders of the trade union movement. He became a corrupt capitalist. He is now president of South Africa, and it's because of his role today in supporting and bolstering the neoliberal capitalist regime that they are oppressing workers like the striking Clover workers. And we're here today to say to the Israeli government, we struck against your ships during the apartheid days. More recently, we honored picket lines by the Arab Resource and Organizing Committee and the Stop Zim Action Committee pickets against your ships in the Port of Oakland in the year 2010 and again last year. We made sure that Zim line ships, the Israeli company Zim, was not worked anywhere on the West Coast. And we're going to express that kind of solidarity today. We're putting the Israeli government and the owner of Clover, the Wertheimer family, on notice. If you continue to oppress the striking Clover workers in South Africa, we're prepared to take solidarity action as we have in the past. Victory to the Clover workers.
Stop the union busting. Zionists out of South Africa. Zionists out of South Africa. This rally today, this International Day of Action, is not just about the struggle in South Africa. It's also about the struggle in every country of the world, including the United States. And we in the Bay Area are facing a fight against another billionaire union buster, John Fisher. John Fisher owns the A's, he owns the Gap Corporation, which has slave labor around the world. And guess what? John Fisher wants to destroy the Port of Oakland. He wants to privatize it, to steal the Port of Oakland. This privatization is going on all over the world. Ports are being privatized, and there's an attack on the longshoremen, and they want to gentrify the Port of Oakland. And Melody Davis, who is an activist, a fighter against the privatization of the Port of Oakland for the workers and the people of the Port of Oakland and West Oakland, where they face gentrification. So welcome, Melody Davis.
Yeah, I'm going to try to give them hell. But you know, like it says, an injury to one is an injury to all. We need to stand with that constantly because, like Steve said, they're trying to privatize everything. These people they're already a millionaire. Now they want to be a billionaire. Then they want to be a trillionaire. And where does this leave us people who just work normal jobs, 9 to 5? John Fisher, what he doing over there in my town of West Oakland, he gonna have $1 million houses over there, condos. When those people move over there, they're gonna want the noise to stop at a certain time when the ball game start. The ball game, when they win, what do? They do the fireworks. So what they gonna do the fireworks at 6 o'clock? Because guess what? Then they got to deal with the trains over there. Mr. Fisher is trying to build a new community, a new town on the other side of the tracks. Amtrak runs 24/7. You got the longshoremen 24/7. Plus, with the longshoremen in the basin where the big ships turn around in, guess what? They're not going to be able to do that. 2 reasons why. They took 10 miles away in the water, so they can only go so far. Then if somebody down there trying to catch a ball from a gang, how the ship going to see that person down in a canoe? Come on now. It's not worth people's lives for $1. And plus, I guess you guys know, Mr. Fisher, he wants us citizens, the residents of Oakland, to pay for his fantasy island. I think that's wrong. That's wrong. And then also, it's going to be another tax, 2 taxes now for this man. He wants to tax everybody from Lake Merritt to West Oakland. And he's building it in West Oakland. So where is the benefit for the community? There's none. The tickets on the ball game, they're going to go up. The trains are going to come through there. You're going to be late for the game. Popcorn go up. Hot dogs going to go up. Everything going to go up. And guess what? He going to profit. He wants to put a $400. See, we just think it's a stadium. He pimping the A's. All the A players are low pay. We already know what he's done to the players. They don't want to go. What's happening is that not only the stadium, he built it for 35,000 people, but also he's bringing a 400-room hotel. Oakland got enough hotels. So he's going to get money out the hotels. Then he's going to do a commercial building, which is mixed. That's called retail and offices. Now, mind you, he already owned the Gap. He owns Old Navy. And he owns that other store. They're all family. 3 of them, he owns those stores, y'all. The Fisher family owned those stores. And he owned a charter school called KIP. And Dave Cavell, he owns and runs with the founder of Rocket Ship. See, this is what I'm doing. They piggyback it off of our children subsidized public funds. And they want to close all our schools up. And then Fisher and the rest of them big time people, then they come in there with a charter school. And if your kid don't behave and do what their standards are, they will kick them out. Because they did that to my grandchildren. They did that to my grandchildren. How did that traumatize my grandchildren? Think about it. And then they're going to talk about some acres of land, just plain grass. Well, guess what? The homeless going to see that pretty green grass, and they're going to put their tent there. Once they put their tent there, a Karen or Rebecca Barbecue Becky going to call the police. OPD. Killer cops. Killer cops. Killer cops. Killer cops. Killer cops. Those people have mental issues. They don't want to be out there. But some of them have no choice. When they get out of Santa Rita jail, they just put them out in the streets. They don't have no place for those people to go. So they pitch a tent. They put on 2 jackets, some socks, find a blanket, and they rest somewhere. Guess what? Those people in that area is not going to like it, and they're going to call OPD. And OPD going to be mad because guess what? They're not going to be able to get over there in a hurry because whatever train, Amtrak be coming through there, they're not going to be able to get through. If one of those millionaire people have a heart attack, the ambulance is not going to be able to get through. So guess what? A life won't be saved. The Howard Terminal is a horrible deal, you guys. A horrible deal. And guess what? Someone's going to get hurt. Then they want to blame it on us. But we're trying to stop it. Don't you understand? Just say no. Come to the rallies that I do. I put it on Facebook. My name is Melody Davis. I put it on my Facebook. Attend some of the city council meeting. On February the 15th, the city council is supposed to make a decision. And I'm hoping that they're brave enough to understand it's not going to help Oakland at all. You know what? We're not going to see none of that money for 45 years, you guys. Read up on it. Read up on it. We're not going to see it in 2 years. We're going to see any money that we going to get that's going to come to Fisher first. So please understand what I'm saying, you guys. Look it up. Howard Terminal. It's not a terminal. It's located at Howard Terminal, so that means the longshoremen, some of them going to be without a job. They don't know what they're doing. They do not. All they're looking at is the dollars. So please, I ask you guys, all over, call into the Oakland City Council. Carol Fife is in her district. Call the Board of Supervisors, Nate Malley. He's the one who sold the Coliseum, the stadium, to Mr. Fisher. And when he sold it to him for $85 million, he forgot to ask him what was he going to do with it. And guess what? It just goes sit there. The stadium is just going to sit there. The stadium is just going to sit there, you guys. It's almost like a Raiders deal. If this ain't going through, because Mr. Fisher is still looking in Las Vegas. Matter of fact, one of them millionaires gave him some property. He got property over there, you guys. He got land that he can build on. But you know what? They probably won't let him put a hotel in there because they got plenty of hotels over there already. So why would they need another one? See, that's what's happening. That's what's happening. So an injury to one is an injury to all. And that's why I'm standing up. Thank you. And that milk is in a white and black organic box. A quart size. Don't forget now, it's in a white container with black look like paws of a dog. It's called Clover. Don't buy it no more. Thank you.
Thank you for that important presentation, because we have to tie the struggle in South Africa to the struggle right here in the United States. Because workers in the United States, communities, homeless are being threatened every day like they are in South Africa. The homeless are being attacked in South Africa. Well, there was supposed to be a change in South Africa. It's a great, rich country like the United States, but there's more homeless in South Africa now than ever because of capitalism. That's what we're talking about, global capitalism, basically sucking the blood of working people, of poor people from around the world. Now, one of the fights has been in the San Francisco labor movement, the Labor Council, to support the Palestinian people and against the U.S. aid, military and economic aid to Israel, and the support by the AFL-CIO for the Histadrut, for the Israeli government. Why are our unions supporting Zionism? That's what I want to know. Why is AFL-CIO supporting the Histadrut, supporting U.S. military aid to Israel? It's an outrage against the people of the world that the United States and the labor movement here, the leadership, is supporting Zionism. So our next speaker is Lisa Milo. She's a delegate to the San Francisco Labor Council and a member of United Professional and Technical Employees from UCSF. Welcome, Lisa.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Milos, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the Labor Council. I'm a delegate of the Labor Council, but I am a member also of my union, UPTI, University of Professional and Technical Employees, who on June 2nd passed a resolution in solidarity with Palestine. A resolution that was also very critical and asked for our union to break ties, the AFL-CIO and the unions in Labor Council to also break ties with, with Histadrut. Histadrut is what they consider themselves as a trade union, but they're not a trade union. The Israeli trade union, they themselves are an institution that helped create apartheid in Israel-Palestine. From the beginning, from the very, very beginning, they participated in the exclusion, the outright exclusion, the harassment, the displacement of Palestinian workers, and have created a caste system in Palestine, Israel-Palestine, where union members, in order to be able to work, you have to be part of this union, but then in order to be able to work, you have to be part of this union. But at the same time, the Palestinian union members pay dues, but they are not represented. They are not allowed to work in certain industries. They are completely displaced, and there is outright discrimination against Palestinian workers by Histadrut. This has been going on for more than 70 years, and it's time that the labor movement of the United States stand in solidarity with Palestine, and specifically with the Palestinian workers. The Palestinian unions have called for this as well, for us to express our solidarity, and our union on June 2nd passed a resolution in this respect. As a result of that, we also went to the Labor Council. A group of delegates, of San Francisco delegates, went to the Labor Council to present a resolution in solidarity with Palestine, which, as of now, was moved to committee, but then nobody knows what happened to it. There has not been any reports on that. Unfortunately, we got blindsided, and it was sent to committee, basically. And the committee is in charge. The people that are in charge of that committee are supporters of Israel, unfortunately. The other issue that I wanted to mention is that we stand in firm solidarity with Professor Rabab. This is the the way that she and the Arab and Middle Eastern Studies program have been treated is a direct attack on academic freedom and also on our First Amendment rights to be able to have the information that we deserve to have regarding what's happening in Palestine and in Arab studies. This is part of the struggle for ethnic studies as well, and unfortunately the right wing of this country has been trying to silence the ethnic studies and has been trying to silence the issues that are that people of color are facing in this country, and also the labor movement is facing. So I stand firmly with Rabab, and we hope to be able to continue to fight, and we're going to be continuing to fight at the Labor Council to make sure that we, and as delegates, and stand firm. One thing I forgot to mention is, as a result of the resolution that we presented to the Labor Council last June 14th, in solidarity with Palestine, we ended up getting a letter from the AFL-CIO prohibiting the Labor Council from passing any resolutions of an international nature of policies of which they supposedly have taken a position. That goes against the autonomy of the labor movement. That goes against the rights of workers to be fully represented by their delegates at these labor bodies, because as we know, the AFL-CIO has been complicit in the torture, in the complete, in the overthrow of governments, such as the one in Chile back in 1973. The AFL-CIO took positions that were completely contrary to the rights of workers, such as the one that they took with regard to through their National Endowment for Democracy, through their U.S. aid program, the AFL-LD program, which they funded. The AFL-CIO funded a trucker strike against the Allende government and paid them $50 a day in 1973 to strike against the socialist government of Salvador Allende in 1971. And this has all come to light. In fact, there was a resolution that was passed in Washington State by Washington employees, by Washington labor councils, where they were demanding that the AFL-CIO come clean on their foreign policy, and this is what we need. We need to make sure that the AFL-CIO responds to the actual needs of the labor movement. Unfortunately, what we're seeing, on the contrary, that we're seeing them attempts to silence us, to silence the movement, and we cannot stand for that. So that is something that I feel that needs to come out. The AFL-CIO's role has not been a good role in terms of supporting the labor movements around the world. Has been a role of intervention, and that has to stop. It is our money they're using to intervene, and we need to stop that. Thank you.
So I wanted to also say that we're in solidarity with the Namibian miners, the Rossing Namibian miners who have been fired, the worker been fired in Namibia at the Rossing uranium mine by the Chinese National Nuclear Corporation, which is busting the unions in Namibia. So this is an international struggle. It's not just in South Africa, it's in Namibia, it's throughout the world that we are organizing a defense. And the Namibian miners are in solidarity with the South African Clover strikers, with the workers of South Africa. This is a global struggle. One of the struggles that is going on as well is the struggle of the Puerto Rican working class, which has faced privatization, union busting, and a destruction of their wealth and resources. And joining us is Ricardo Ortiz. He's a labor activist, labor researcher, supporter of the United Public Workers for Action. So welcome, Ricardo.
Hello, can you hear me loud and clear? Yeah. All right, I want to start by saying some things that have been left out by previous speakers. And it is that recently declassified documents had shown that negotiations between the imperialist corporations and the South African ANC started before the ANC was elected to government. And the South African government, even under Mandela, performed a wave of privatizations and did a lot of layoffs in government. And one of the first things that the Mandela government did was that there was a strike on the transport sector. And you know what the Mandela government did? It mobilized the army against it. And you know who was the Minister of Defense in that first ANC government? It was Joe Bodies, a member of the South African Communist Party that recently, not too long ago, was in prison due to corruption, you know, in terms of sales of military materiel. And you know who was his deputy? None other than Ronnie Casrillos. That was the deputy defense minister. So these people have been involved right from the beginning in privatization, in neoliberal measures against the working class. So the Popular Front didn't work back in 1936 and doesn't work right now. It continues being a betrayal. There cannot be class collaboration. It will come back to haunt us. Now, the South African government under apartheid and the Israeli government and the West German government collaborated in a program called Safari 1. And what was? The program was Safari 1 that was exposed in the United Nations. It was the program that helped the apartheid regime develop nuclear weapons. The apartheid regime had 9 nuclear weapons that was dismantled under the ANC government. But you know why that happened? It did happen because the South African capitalists and the National Party politicians demanded that these weapons had to be dismantled in order for the ANC to come to power. So it is a completely class collaboration right from the get-go. Everything that is happening in the world, my friends, is happening because we are facing a world recession. Probably we are almost very soon into a depression. Today, hundreds of thousands of people in Buenos Aires demonstrated against the IMF that is trying to make the Argentinian government privatize and pay an onerous foreign debt to the bellies and to the fat asses of the international banks. That's what is happening. The Israeli government has supported abroad every kind of repressive measure. It trains the San Francisco PD. It trains the Oakland PD. It trains hundreds of police forces around the United States and around the world. Recently, I'm telling you, about less than a week ago, the Israeli Foreign Ministry announced that they did acquire 6 Dolphin-class submarines made in the Federal Republic of Germany. 5 years ago, the same thing happened, a big sale of German submarines. Let me tell you one thing, and listen to this. At the moment, the Israeli government owns more German-made submarines than the German Navy. That's how militaristic, how aggressive is the Israeli oppressive government. This family that owns Clover dairies in South Africa, they're also the owner of the franchise of Coca-Cola, a multinational in Israel. Coca-Cola, as we know, is a murderous company involved in the complicity of so many atrocities in Latin America, including killing Colombian trade unionists. That is a fact. That is a fact. Those are facts. We can continue on and on. All I want to say is that what we need in the United States and around the world is forming communist parties, workers' parties, independent from government, that will not join class collaborateur governments, that will not join these so-called progressive left governments that ultimately are capitalist governments, and they betray revolutions. They drown in blood revolutions. You want to hear another example of this pathetic Popular Front governments? In Spain right now, in government, there are 2 Communist Party ministers. One of the ministers is the Minister of Labor. What can that pathetic Stalinist minister can do for employment in Spain, which has one of the largest unemployment rates in the European Union? Nothing, nothing, because the means of production are in the hands of the private capitalists. So it's no way in hell that these pathetic Popular Front governments are going to do anything for their people. What they do traditionally, and always have done, is bow to the demands of the imperialists and get anyways overthrown by the repressive forces of their own countries and by the imperialists. That has been the case from, 36 Spain to the Popular Front in Chile. Wherever you mention, you see one of them, it ultimately leads to defeat. Now, the Israeli government also supplies with weaponry around the world. One of the favorite weapons of police in Latin America is the submachine gun Uzi, being used against the working class. The Latin American armies are equipped with Galil rifles, which is a powerful lethal weapon that the Israelis try to combine the AK-47 and the American Colt M16 to make that dangerous and harmful weapon. That's what the Israeli government does around the world. And certainly, obviously, one of the test cases is in South Africa, which the ANC government had gone loose its hounds by privatizing a whole bunch of corporations, and particularly this big corporation. The workers in South Africa are making a demand that is more than just, which is put that company under workers' control. That's what we should be demanding in the United States. We got to get rid of these trade union bureaucrats that are in bed with the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is nothing but a graveyard of social movements. It's a graveyard of any struggle and any fight that gets developed. So we say no to the Democrats. Down with the Democrats. They are class collaborators of all these reactionary governments in the third world. And a big way of support for the Israeli government comes from the Democratic Party politicians. They are, supportive of that, of the Israeli government. So we should say, and we should aspire to do workers' revolutions around the world. Down with the Popular Front in South Africa. Down with the American imperialists. Down with the Israeli racist government that oppresses and assassinates Palestinians every day, by the hour, by the minute. The Palestinian people are facing genocide, and we, people, workers around the world, we have to stand up and step up the solidarity and support of the Palestinian people toward a world without frontiers for a socialist revolution. Thank you.
The struggle of the South African working class for their freedom has been a long one, and we in the Bay Area were part of that struggle. Some of the speakers here were part of the struggle to free Moses Mayikiso, who was jailed by the racist South African government. We were part of the struggle against apartheid, and the United States was supporting supporting apartheid. In fact, the AFL-CIO was supporting Buthelezi. The CIA, through the AFL-CIO and the U.S. government, were actually intervening in South Africa to keep the apartheid regime in power. And it was only after there was a mass movement and workers' action, protests around the world, that the United States changed its position. But U.S. imperialism was supporting apartheid, as they support Israeli racism and the apartheid regime. The United States is a key supporter of Israel. Our next speaker is Carol Seligman, who is a retired teacher and also has been involved in internationalism and solidarity, was also involved in the struggle against the apartheid regime in South Africa. Welcome, Carol.
Seeing the tons of weapons that are being loaded on trucks for Ukraine to be used against Russia is a reminder of what the U.S. does for Israel, sends tons of weapons to Israel to use against Palestinians. Our job is to have solidarity with our co-workers around the world. We're the majority. The owners of Clover, the ruling class of Israel, the ruling class of the United States, the owners of all these countries, it's a tiny group of people. We're the overwhelming majority. But what we need is solidarity between all the workers of the world, supporting every time there's a struggle for decent wages, for decent conditions. The Clover workers are struggling to turn their company into a cooperative and take it away from the Israeli billionaire so that they can get decent conditions. Well, that's just the kind of thing that we want here, that working class people want in the United States and all over the world. Some of us here are working on an international workers' action to free Mumia Abu-Jamal and all anti-racist and anti-imperialist freedom fighters. And there are many, many of them. We have 10 pictures of them on our flyer. Jack, can you hold up the flyer? But that's not all. There's also Rochelle McGee and Veronza Bowers, Bill Dunn, Mumia, Sondiata Akoli, Zinachle. There are so many political prisoners. They're in prison because they, like us, they fought, they resisted, they fought for human rights. We think these struggles are indivisible. People who struggle for freedom must be in solidarity with everyone around the world who's struggling for freedom. And we link our struggle to free political prisoners here in the United States with struggle of Palestinians against Israeli genocide and struggles of South African workers against Israeli businesses and against the policy of the ANC government, which collaborates with Israel and with the United States. An injury to one is an injury to all. Worker solidarity forever.
Thank you, Carol. And there are political prisoners all over the world, working class political prisoners, including Hoshino in Japan, who is in prison for fighting the U.S. military security agreement that Japan has with the United States has with Japan. If you fight against U.S. imperialism, you're threatened with jailing, with frame-up, and that's what's going on around the world. Workers, militants who fight U.S. imperialism are faced with imprisonment and jailing. We have to stand with them, and we support that International Day of Action. So one of the struggles is the transit workers, and we have a retired transit worker, Dave Reardon, who is a Teamster and a retired transit worker in San Francisco. Welcome, Dave.
The main contradiction for the workers, and whether unionized or not, in Israel and in the United States is that both Israel and the United States are white European settler colonies. And we, the workers, whether unionized or not, live our lives on stolen land at the benefit of colonialism. That's the strategic route that explains why this trade union does this, that trade union doesn't do that, this worker thinks this, that worker thinks that. We're white workers on a settler colony, stolen land. I represent the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. We think the strategic thing for workers to do is to struggle for reparations to the black community. It's a labor issue. The United States was built on unpaid, stolen labor of African workers. It's a labor issue, it's a wage issue, it's a strategic issue. Once again, thanks for the opportunity to be here. I really appreciate what everyone said, especially about talking about apartheid. Of course, Israel is an apartheid state as well. And one thing that doesn't get said very often is the people in Gaza and the people in the West Bank, those are workers, whether they're in a union or not. When Israel bombs Gaza, Israel's bombing Palestinian workers. Thanks again.
Also, we have a statement from Rabab Abdul-Hadi Defense Committee. She's a professor at San Francisco State of the Arab Muslim Ethnicities and Diasporas program. And wouldn't you know it, but the Zionists are trying to shut that program down. Zoom censored a class that she was having, and Facebook and Google. So the right of Palestinian professors, Palestinian American professors, to talk about the struggle of Palestinians is being suppressed right here in the United States, right in San Francisco. So we have a statement. Fortunately, she can't be here. She is in New York. It says, the campaign to defend Dr. Rabab Abdul-Hadi and the Arab and Muslim Ethnicities and Diaspora Studies program at San Francisco State University stands firmly in support of the Clover workers in South Africa. We believe that the struggle against Zionist and right-wing forces in the United States who try to silence all Palestinian voices speaking out against the brutal apartheid and occupation in Palestine is the same. The Clover workers are fighting against the corporate takeover of the dairy industry in South Africa. Corporate takeovers by Israeli companies like Milco not only perpetuate the illegal occupation, but are callous in the disregard of workers' rights in South Africa and elsewhere, stripping them of their jobs, their voice, and their dignity. The attacks against Dr. Abdul-Hadi and Ahmed cannot be viewed in isolation from the greater struggle against the apartheid regime in Israel, the Clover strike, and the human rights of all people oppressed by colonial and repressive forces around the world. This is what Dr. Abdul-Hadi calls the indivisibility of justice. This is a global struggle of solidarity among all peoples fighting against racism, colonialism, capitalism, and patriarchy. Clover workers, your struggle are our struggle as we continue to fend off continuous and vicious attacks by Zionists in the U.S. that would dismantle the critical ethnic studies program at SFSU, a program that is a legacy of the seminal 1968 student strike at San Francisco State University. We recognize that it is our obligation to support all struggles that uplift human rights for all peoples around the world. The campaign to defend Abdul-Hadi and the Ahmed program unite with the solidarity of international labor organizations and human rights groups in uplifting Clover's struggle against Milco and the forces of repression that would destroy Clover and the lives of its workers. Solidarity with the Clover workers, brothers and sisters. Our next speaker is Charles Minster, who is a retired laborer in San Francisco. Welcome, Charles.
Comrades, brothers and sisters. One thing that's been going through my mind the last month or so is that the UN General Assembly recently voted on a resolution put forward by the Russian delegation to condemn the glorification of fascism and Nazism. There were only two governments in the world that voted no: the United States and Ukraine. So if we wonder about the lash up between these two countries at this period in time. Back in the 1970s, 1980s, like with Comrade Heyman, I was a merchant sailor shipping out of the National Maritime Union. And I sailed to South Africa during the Soweto, during the uprising. I was in South Africa. Soweto is inland. And I believe I was in Durban. And that was our first port of call. And I noticed that there were guards on the ships with automatic rifles as the longshoremen worked. So I saw, you know, me, I'm a new guy out on the block there, and I asked one of my fellow sailors to, what the hell is this? Oh, he says, that's nothing. You know, when I sailed in here back in the 60s, they had whips, bull whips, to guard the longshoremen, but they mechanized and used machine guns. And that's what this outfit in South Africa is doing right now. They're using automatic weapons, dogs, to guard the workers, to keep them from taking control of the dairy that they've been working at for decades. I call for the nationalization of those dairies without compensation, because they've worked decades and never got the fair compensation and treatment that they deserve. You know, Ramaphosa, he needed to get his background cleared when he became a capitalist. And he had high political ambitions because he had been a leader of the Mine Workers Union. So what he did was, when there was the strike by platinum miners, I believe it was in 2015. 2012 was it? 2012, thank you, Jack. He gave the okay to the cops of the ANC to attack those miners. And 34 were gunned down, unarmed miners, gunned down by the ANC police. Surprised that Ramaphosa was president now? He, by the way, had stock in the platinum mines. So there's no question about which side these guys are on. They're on the side of capital, and they're doing nothing but fronting for the capitalists and the imperialists of South Africa. And you know, something around the Palestinian issue, when I was in the Labor Council as a delegate from the Laborers Union, I put forward a motion to condemn the Israeli Zionist government for their bombing of the Palestinian Trade Union Federation headquarters. Specifically bombed the headquarters of the Palestinian trade unions. Well, that resolution passed with some discussion, but it passed. Well, then Nancy Pelosi, I'm sure the consulate in here, and other prominent politicians got on the horn to the Labor Council and saying, what is this? Condemning the state of Israel? Do you know what you're doing? And out of the woodwork came these trade unions that hadn't showed up in the Labor Council in decades, and they called for a re-vote on the issue. Well, of course, it was re-voted on and was voted down. Not a big margin, but it was voted down. So they got their clearance. So right now, the labor movement in this country is complete control in the pocket of the Democratic Party. And they will do nothing that they know might offend the Democratic Party, and they will take orders whenever they're told. That's what they are. Well, I'd like to have a labor movement under a political party, but it would be a revolutionary workers' party, which is what we need in this country and around the world. Because in this country, the workers are the majority. We need to be organized and directed. And for that, we need a political party. You can't do it without it. History has proven that. We know we can't do anything individually or in small groups. It's going to take a mass movement. And we have the ability to do that in this country. But we got to get rid of the bureaucrats that are in control with these unions today who do nothing but kneel to the Democrats. Victory to the Clover workers. Nationalize the dairy industry in South Africa without compensation.
Anyway, I just want to say thanks everybody for coming out. and being here with us, the thread. Everybody has the thread. And so keep that thread. This is neoliberal. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? And which side are you on? South Africa's got a problem. A push to privatize. As Israel milks their labor system, it's how they neoliberalize. They laid off half the workers, cut wages of the rest. It's time to take our power back. It's time to disinvest. Which side are you on? 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 You know, I used to work on a milk co-op on my own grandfather's land, and now I'm policing my own community as a low-wage security man. Racial colonialism? Whose dumb idea was that? Are the ANC polls getting kickbacks? Wait, I think I smell a rat. Which side are you on? 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 Wertheim family billionaires, the world sees through your game. Neoliberal apartheid thugs, we call you out by name. Which side are you on? 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 In Jerusalem and Johannesburg and all across the land, fuck neoliberal apartheid. For Clover workers take a stand. Which side are you on? 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 Which side are you on?